There's two playing instructions that continuously cause confusion in the FM world, and it's to do with marking, defending, and we're going to break it down today. So when you're setting your team up, last year in FM22, out of possession had the option to tighter mark. Indeed, it was somewhere up here, but now, alas, it has gone, it has left us, but never fear. You can now literally just go to your players and just tell them all to do it themselves. So if you want them to mark tighter, you can tell them all to mark tighter. But what if we want to get a bit more granular, a bit more detailed, and a bit more specific in areas of the pitch? There is two more options under player instructions, but people get so confused by these. And these are the options here. You've got mark specific player and mark specific position. And the big question is always, what the blooming heck, what the bloomini, what the deuce is the difference? I think it's a valid question because the wording of them kind of makes you think they do the same job, but they don't. So here we are with Brozovic. He's a defensive midfielder, so you'd think, right, let's cut out their attacking midfielder. So under position, we'll go down, and if you select attacking midfielder, you can then assume, which a lot of people do, that he will mark the upcoming attacking midfielder, which is going to be Simone Verdi. However, if you think that, you're going to be disappointed, and you're going to see them miles apart all the time. Let me explain. So if you set Brozovic to mark specific position, and it is the attacking midfield position, he will basically take out and mark anybody who comes into that position. So he'll hover around, but if they come from this direction or through the middle, whatever player it is, he's going to occupy them. Simone Verdi, meanwhile, can go wherever he wants. If he roams about a bit, he can go to fullback. Brozovic won't follow him unless he's in his zone. So if you like a better word, it may be zonal marking for that player, because he's not marking the player as such, he's marking the zone and anyone who comes into it. So remember, the guy in the number 10 role for Verona is Verdi there. You can see him just next to Brozovic. They've actually ended up in the same kind of position. As the game plays on, Brozovic is in and around Verdi because they're both in the same role. But there, Brozovic sets right off, you see. He's not concerned with Verdi. He's more concerned about getting in the box and helping out his defence as Colon breaks around the back. Verdi now coming into the box. Here again, he's super tight to Verdi. There's Verdi in that number 10 role. But see how Brozovic passed him on there? He passed him on to the defenders because this guy's in his role. Now Brozovic cleans it up. Verdi comes back, but Brozovic is more concerned with the guy in front of him because he's the guy in this area of the pitch that he's been asked to cover. So hopefully me calling it zonal kind of player instruction kind of makes sense when you see it in match. He's just operating in and around that zone. So if this was an opposition player, Hakan for example, started coming in, Brozovic would take him out. However, if he's told to mark Barella, and Barella goes over here for a hot dog, Brozovic says, away you go mate, I'm waiting here. So let's see the difference in match when we go for the actual specific player. So we'll drop this down and we're going to tell him to mark Tamezi, defensive midfielder. We're going to see him drive forward and go into their strata and leave his own strata because he wants to follow him. So we've just started an attacking movement and Brozovic is way back there. You can see Tamezi in his defensive midfield role tracking back as well. So that's fine. But look what happens when Verona regain possession. So they've got the ball back now. Gunter to Ilicic. And then when it comes to Tamezi, look who's on him. Brozovic leaves that role and he goes for the defensive midfielder. So he's not bothered about attacking midfielder because I've told him to mark Tamezi, who is in their pivot. He goes towards him and follows him. Here again, Verona have got the ball and Brozovic is on Tamezi like a flash. Now this is really quite interesting if you're looking for a high press and pushing the pivot because that's my defensive midfielder really pushing against their defensive midfielder. So you don't have to use an attacking midfielder if you're going to use this technique. I will say this though, the marking in FM23 is not razor tight like it was in FM22. Whether an update may fix that, they are tight, but there is times they can get away from them, even with the tight man marking. But it's definitely worth working with, and we can try something kind of funky with it too. Now there's a couple of things you can do with this tool. You can have it on all the match like there with Brozovic and Tamezi, or what I like to do is in points during the game if someone's causing us a bit of problem or to break things up a bit, I'll put a striker on my defensive midfielder as well. So on this example, of all people, right, I've got Lautaro Martinez, who is a poacher. So normally he'd just be sitting up high on the pitch, not doing much, occupying the centre-backs. I've slotted him in on Tamezi, the defensive midfielder. Now in FM23, much more than FM22, defensive attributes do assist the effectiveness of the marking. So don't expect them to be amazing at it, but they are going to cause them a problem if you set them to do it. We've got the ball at the back. It's just been launched forward. Lautaro's in his normal attacking position. Now over here you can see Tamezi and there's Lautaro. So look what happens when we lose the ball. Ball goes up. Lautaro sees we haven't got the ball. Bang! He runs straight for Tamezi. Now he's a poacher. There's no way he'd be there normally. He'd be on the centre back. But because I've told him to follow Tamezi, He's there causing him a problem. Getting up in his face there. Didn't win it, but it was all around him. See what I mean? Now he's following him there. Even go as far back as our own penalty box. Now bear in mind, he's a poacher. Normally, you can see where Lukaku is up here. He's looking at his mate saying, what are you doing over there, mate? Get back up here. Well, that's just a little tool you can use. I wouldn't recommend you using it right through the match because you're going to lose his attacking potency. But at points during the game where certain players causing you a problem, a strike is probably not a bad position to sacrifice because the rest of your team are going to stay in shape. Once you understand the difference between the two, it is yet another tool in your methods to press teams and your defensive shape. If you're doing a mid-block, maybe don't want a defensive midfielder jumping up into a defensive midfielder, but why not use a striker just to drop in there and push the central midfielder when you're not pushing the centre-backs? Now, as always, that is just my take and my understanding of the game. If you have a different idea of it, let me know in the comments. But through testing, that is what I'm seeing at the minute, and it's going to help me build a few tactics and break teams down using a defensive approach.